Affairs Committee. Hopefully the last committee meeting of the day for most of us. We started at 8 this morning, and I think this is my 6th committee meeting, so save the best for last. Let's see. So we do have a quorum, and I will ask Senator Jackson, would you bless us, please?
Let us pray. Holy God, we give you thanks for the gift of life. We thank you for the sunshine that nourishes us and plants. We pray for all who farm, all who work, who labor, all who truck, and allow us to have food and drink to eat. We ask that you would bless them, and may they have bounty on their tables as well. Amen.
Thank you. All right, let me tell you what we're going to do today. We've got 2 bills on the agenda. House Bill 1303 by Chairman Robert Dickey and House Bill 1150 by Chairman Robert Dickey. We're going to hear both bills from him. We are going to vote on 1303. We will allow any public testimony on 1303 if anybody wants to comment on it. But on House Bill 1150, the Freedom to Farm Act, we're just going to hear the bill from the chairman, and we're going to let the committee members ask him any questions that they may have, and we'll have another opportunity for public testimony at a later date. But due to the lateness of the hour and the fatigue of the chairman, that's how we're going to do it today. So just wanted to let you know up front, that's going to be the run of show. Chairman Dickey, if you'd come forward, we'll let you tell us about House Bill 1303. And we've got a committee sub in the bill. So if you'll give us your LC number.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm really delighted to see the Senate working so hard today, early to late. So that sounds real promising. I know we all got a busy day tomorrow too. So thank you for hearing these 2 bills today. We had a real challenging weekend. A lot of our ag people did with this weather, but hopefully things will turn out a little better than maybe we expected. So with that, I'd like HB 1303 LC 510161S. So I'm bringing you a sub to the one that actually we passed in the House a few weeks ago due to some technical wording. Just simply a shall to a may to a shall to a may. But this bill had its origins over here in the Senate. Senator Wilkerson passed Senate Bill 330 a few years ago to allow elementary ag education in Georgia in elementary schools and systems that wanted to have that opportunity. And that bill is most of what 1330 is to come back with us start with a pilot program, which we have the last 3 years. And so this bill really takes it from a pilot program to a permanent program. And that's simply really what this bill is doing. The pilot program has worked very, very well in the schools. We kind of envisioned very few schools starting with it, but it really exceeded expectations. There, as y'all know, our ag education program, our FFA, is in high school as well as middle school. And I think Senator Wilkerson and those of you in the Education Committee just wanted to have the opportunity to take it down in elementary. And it's an opt-in. Local schools provide the teachers and the but the Department of Education up here, State Department of Education, develops the curriculum. And so those local schools use the curriculum with their staff to do that. So the pilot school started in 2019. I think they started with 25 schools the first year, 27 the next year, and 31. And so we're up to over 14,000 students now taking elementary education. It's a great program. I was involved, Farm Bureau, through the years. I've had a Ag in the Classroom program that has been very effective, trying to put agricultural examples in science and math for those young people to do that. Schedules, I think the school systems, they vary depending on the school systems. They had the flexibility, whether it's once a week for each grade level or 2 weeks at a time, or it varies, I think, how these school systems go about using it. That's really the program. That's really the bill. We're not changing anything much with the program, just taking it from pilot to a permanent option for local systems. I just think it's real important to start early with young people in elementary school and let them know where the food comes from and a little bit about our ag systems, so they'll roll into other programs later on. So that's the bill, 1303. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Chairman. It's been a really wildly successful program. I think the initial bill called for 6 schools as a pilot, and it immediately 25 or so wanted to do it, and so they let all of them do it. It is locally funded. The curriculum, as he said, is put together by the State Board of Education, State Department of Education. I just think it's fantastic to get kids interested in ag early and tie in the math, science, and technology aspect to it, and gives the teachers, I think, another tool to teach that type of curriculum and pique the children's interest. I'm told that I asked the question a while back, but you can't join FFA in elementary school. Right. You have to be middle school or older for a lot of reasons, but it still gets them kind of started and interested in that deal. So,
Senator, we also left in this bill the report that the pilot program had in it. So we'll get that report back at the end of the school year on that. But it's going to be very positive. No issues or problems that I'm aware of with this program so far. So I think it'll flow right into allowing it without a year break. That's why we're bringing this bill this year, so we don't lose the ability to continue the program.
All right. Senator Jackson has a question.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Mr. Chairman. On line 30, you changed the language from may employ to shall employ an agricultural education teacher. Can you say a bit about why that is?
Yes, I think the Department of Education thinks it's important we have some certified teachers there to teach education, just ag education that's had some training. To do that, Joel Mackey is here, and he could speak to that a little bit more on that. We discussed that. Sure did. Thank you for picking up that. I think we wanted somebody that has some experience and competence and training in teaching the curriculum that the Department of Education has compiled on this, and so that's why the shall is there. Yeah.
Do you have a sense of how many ag education teachers we have available across the state to do elementary ag?
I do not, but I would think, I do not know the answer to that question, but I think mainly a lot of these schools have ag education in middle and high school, and they are using those teachers to bring them down to elementary on certain days of the week or certain periods during the school year to teach this program. And so that they're using the same personnel mainly to do that. It's my understanding.
Tyler, Senator Harper wants to
Yeah.
comment on that, I think.
Chairman Dickey was actually, for example, in my local school system, they've utilized other ag education teachers to provide the elementary school programs. I think, obviously, to talk to the may to a shall, just specifically, it's only if that local school system decided to provide an ag education program, then they would have to employ an ag ed teacher to teach that curriculum. To your question, both the University of Georgia, Fort Valley State, and ABAC have some level of ag education training where we're training teachers. So we are pumping out ag education teachers every year. I think obviously there's always the supply demand conversation that you can have. But ABAC is the latest school to add ag education curriculum. The University of Georgia has always had it. We do, we do hire Florida grads and Auburn grads and South Carolina grads and Georgia too, but obviously we try to hire our own and train our own here. But in some instances, what some school systems have done is utilize, as Chairman Dickey said, utilize their high school and middle school ag education teachers to teach that elementary school program. So to answer your question, I think we will have the staff to meet the necessary requirement, and obviously the Department of Education will work with those local school systems to make sure that it's provided.
Thank you, Senator Harper. All right, Senator Anderson.
Chairman Dickey, thank you for bringing this bill. When we say elementary, are we going to start in kindergarten? Or are we going to, did we leave it up to the school to decide where they want to, what grade they want to start? Or
My understanding is K through 5.
K through 5?
And then after that, you get to middle school.
Middle school.
Programs. So it's
So
our youngest.
Would the school have the option to maybe do it in certain grades and not all the grades? Or?
I would imagine so.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes. I don't know the exact answer to that.
Did Mr. Mackey sign up to speak on this, or?
I can, but I didn't.
Yeah, come up here if you've got something you could add for us, please. It's Joel Mackey.
And could I add one more thing? I
Yes,
see
sir.
one more speaking point to Senator Jackson. One of the fastest growing areas in elementary ag education is our urban suburban schools, like Fulton, Clayton, and Muskogee counties. So I think this is really, I'm excited about all the urban ag that we got going on in ag education and extension and all these other areas. Definitely a focus, and that's where we need it most is our urban and suburban areas.
Chairman Walker, Chairman Dickey, thank you for bringing this bill, and I'll address Senator Anderson, your comment and question first.
Joel, tell us who you are and
Thank
who
you.
you're with and what your relationship is.
Thank you, Senator. I'm Joel Mackey, and I represent the Georgia Vocational Agricultural Teachers Association, which is a group of 400 agriculture educators throughout the state. Most of our members, really all of our members, are middle school and high school teachers, but we are very excited about the work that this bill has done already to continue with ag literacy, ag education, and certainly building the pipeline for ag ed students. To address your comment first, Senator Anderson, of the 14,000 elementary ag ed students that we had in this current school year, 9,000 of those were in grades 3 through 5. So that is frankly where most of those students are. There are some systems are electing to do some kind of revolving student path for K through second graders. Sometimes that might mean they get 2 weeks of elementary ag education and they move on to something else. But local systems working with the curriculum that DOE has developed are implementing that at those various grade levels. But today, that focus has been on 3rd through 5th graders. To your question, Senate Bill 330 had a requirement that the PSC, Professional Service Commission, develop a basic guidance for how we would certify elementary ag ed. And so that's, to be candid, it's still a work in progress. But the most recent report I got was for currently teachers that are certified in elementary education, they would need 9 hours of credits effectively in the substantive areas of agriculture. So maybe they're certified in math or just elementary ag education as a whole. They would get some certification in agriculture in order to provide the special that is ag. Similar, middle school and high school, the long-term idea would be maybe our middle schoolers, teachers, may need a little bit more certification to know how to teach elementary students. My dad's an ag teacher, or was an ag teacher, and you know, putting my dad in a classroom to teach my 7-year-old might not be the best idea without some a little bit of a additional training. So that's the purpose of that. But I don't believe we will have, based on those structure and that flexibility, we don't anticipate there being a shortage. But if there is, to Senator Harper's point, this will be a supply and demand. We'll move into it, I think, progressively.
Any other questions? All right, what's the will of the committee? We've got a motion to pass. We got a second, Senator Harper. Any further discussion? Good bill. All in favor, raise your hand. Okay, LC 510161S passes unanimously with a do pass recommendation, and it'll now go to Senate by committee sub, and it'll House committee sub, and it'll be going to rules. Mr. Chairman, who's going to carry the bill?
I would love for Senator Max Burns, with his great education and background, even though it's much higher than elementary education, would be a great person to carry that.
I'll be happy to do that for you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. All right, very good. All right, now House Bill 1150, the Freedom to Farm Act.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I'm off of LC 510123S. And, no, wait a minute. Which one is it?
LC 510143S.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Is that what you got?
I think I brought the wrong one. Our good lead counsel over there, Dave Berry, has done a great job helping craft this bill. So that's it. I'm sorry. Yes, sir. I want to tell the committee right off the bat, I'm not an attorney, and this bill speaks to some legal activities, and I've got a copy. Okay. And so if you've got some legal questions, we'll have to refer to legal counsel. But the crux, the reason I'm bringing this bill is to try to keep farmers and neighbors out of litigation, and that's what I'm really trying to do. We've got a nuisance laws now, but I think it can be more narrowed, more clarified to keep litigation going on, because that's, you know, when farmers have to go to court, they're the legal department for their farm, and it's tough. And so, but this bill is really quite short and simple and straightforward, but it's just very important that we clarify where there's some, we believe, some ambiguity, some possible ambiguity. We've had it in other states. And this is not about big farming. It's really about able to keep our small family farms, rural farms, and especially urban farms operating without having to be deemed nuisances. And again, it's just trying to minimize lawsuits. This is really, you know, I'm a good neighbor. I've got lots of neighbors around my farm. And we operate, and 99.9% of the farms are operating very, very well with their neighbors. And that's just, most of our farmers are generational farmers that go down and work. But the truth of the matter is urban encroachment is getting more and more near our farms. A lot of people moving to where farms are, did not grow up on a farm or around a farm, and not aware of what goes on a farm. And so it's getting more and more problematic in our state. We have not had a tremendous problem in the past, appearance-wise, but it's really getting there. So this bill is really trying to head off more lawsuits that I see coming. I think are inevitable. So I know we got a attorney or two on this committee, and certainly could open my eyes to some things. But as I understand it, current Georgia law divides this into two situations. A farm starts operating, such as mine, before the complaining neighbors arrive. And, you know, and the current Georgia right to farm law applies, and the complainers are not allowed to file a lawsuit if the farm has been in operation for a year or more. And so that's kind of the situation with most farms now. We've been operating, doing what we've always done, putting out fertilizer or spraying or cows grazing or whatever it is, and then the neighbor comes in. Nothing's changed within the farm, but the conditions outside the farm change with the neighbors moving in. The second situation is a new farm starts operating after the complaining neighbors arrive. In this situation, the regular nuisance law applies, and the neighbors have 4 years to file their nuisance claim. And so this is where the ambiguity starts coming in, and this bill takes the complicated situation of changed conditions out of the bill, and that's what you'll see struck here, is the changed conditions. Let me tell you what this bill does. It supports the legislative intent to conserve, protect, and encourage the development and improvement of ag and forest lands in the state. We got a great ag economy in this state. It's a very varied type of agriculture we have, everything from forest to small farmers, big farmers, and it's been very successful. And I just want to keep our legal environment for our farming operations pertinent, and so farmers can operate within this legal framework. As I said, it removes the concept of changed conditions, so the granted nuisance protection is determined by the farm's operation, not the irrelevant conditions of the area around the farm, which the farm can't control. He can't control what goes on outside the farm. He can control on what's going inside his farm, and that's where the ambiguity was with some similar type legislation in other states, and what happens in this state. So those are things that let me tell you a little bit of things this bill does not do. The time frame for right to farm protection to be granted has not changed. Protection can be granted after a year of operation of the farm, and then the neighbors, as I said, have 4 years to file a nuisance claim for actions within that year. However, in response to concerns raised, we've added a section to make it abundantly clear that if the farm converts to a type of operation that qualifies as a CAFO, a confined animal facility operation, concentrated animal feeding operation, the time clock resets. So if that thing changes within the farm, that clock sets. And I heard that loud and clear for some concerns from people. But this bill does not allow for protection to be granted if a farm is operating illegally, improperly, or negligently. There is no additional protection for CAFOs in this bill. It's about really trying to help smaller farmers. This bill does not change a single environmental standard, law, rule, or regulation. If you're not following the law, then this legislation doesn't apply. And the neighbor is totally under the law to file lawsuits against you. So this thing does not get in any kind of rule, regulation, change or override. This bill does not allow newly arriving operations, no matter the size, to create a nuisance without consequences. So if a new operation comes in totally different than what's been there, this bill does not help that situation. All local zoning control is maintained as well. This is not a blanket immunity. Landowners or neighbors can still bring suit. So it's just dealing with a small section of code with nuisances. Again, I don't want farms which are not operating legally have no protection under this. I want everybody to be clear. You've got to comply with laws, rules, regulations, zoning, permitting. This bill does not override any of that. Again, I've had many organizations look at this bill and of support. The Georgia Green Industry Association, Georgia Farm Bureau, National Federation of Independent Businesses, the Georgia Chamber, Georgia Agribusiness Council, EMCs, forestry groups have looked at this bill. I've tried to make this bill. Everybody seems to be in support of this bill. That it does not really negate any laws we got now, override. It just simply makes this nuisance laws we have here abundantly clear to keep all people out of court. I think there's some negative information out there that's totally doesn't even deal with this bill. This bill is very narrow and very definitive in what it does and what it does not do. Worked on it a long time, had a lot of people, a lot of attorneys look at this bill. I know one of the complaints, folks said, we got a good law now, why do we need to change it? Well, we do have a good law, but I think this law is better. We have had some farmers harassed by developers, neighbors that want to try to run them off, and the farmers are having to settle. And so you don't see a lot of these going to court. You see a lot of them settled. And it really drains the farmer's ability to operate when they have to deal with multiple lawsuits. And so, again, I don't think it really puts the farmer at a huge advantage over neighbors. It gives him no protection, I said, if he's not doing things properly. So that's what the bill does. You see some strike language in there, but it's just really striking that whole area of change conditions out of there and just keeping it very simple. And that's what I told folks working on my attorneys. Let's get something simple. Let's get something both sides, neighbors and farmers, can understand, and so it just keeps them. Everybody knows what lane they're in, when the conditions are right, when there is a nuisance and when there isn't a nuisance. And so hopefully this bill does that. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll be happy to answer any questions if I can.
Got a question from Senator Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, Mr. Chairman. I see you've worked on it since we last talked, and I want to acknowledge that and thank you for that.
Enjoyed being on TV with you.
It was fun. So I'm also not a lawyer, and I'm just a preacher. So I'm going to see if you can help me get clarity here. So if I am running a farm that already exists and somebody moves in next to me and they're upset about my farm, they currently cannot file a nuisance complaint. Is that correct? If I've been running, it's a legacy farm, it's your farm.
Yeah.
My neighbor, if they encroach, if they come in, they're new people, they cannot file a nuisance
I
complaint.
can use the right they can certainly sue me, but I can use the right to farm protection.
You're protected.
Hopefully that would help me in the lawsuit since I've been there prior.
Okay. So now let's say if I am not a farmer, I'm just a regular person who has cats and dogs, and your farm becomes a CAFO. The first year, your CAFO, it's cool. I don't notice anything. Nothing seems all that different to me. But in year 2, when my kids go outside to play, they can't stay out there because the smell is so terrible and it gets in their clothes and it just becomes a nuisance. Would I be allowed, as a property owner who pre-existed, who predates that CAFO, would I be allowed under this law to not just sue, but could I actually sue for a nuisance?
I think so. I think you'd have 4 years to do that.
Even if the CAFO began operating more than a year ago? So if the first year, the CAFO, no problem, I don't notice anything. Maybe even the second year, because it takes a while to fill a cesspool, right? So let's say 2 years in, suddenly the cesspool is there, and, it smells. It smells terribly. Would I, as an existing homeowner who predated that CAFO,
I would think that what they are doing the first year, I don't. If they did not do anything differently that second year, Senator, I'm not sure how to answer that. I mean, that is a hypothetical. I would think what they did the first year would be pretty representative of what they're doing. I mean, I don't think what happens the second year would be a whole lot different than what goes on the first year. I mean, you sort of making a hypothetical question where it might, but.
sorry. Well, can I respond? So I happen to.
I've never
right.
operated one of those kind
Right.
of farms.
I don't operate a CAFO, but I do happen to have a lot of chickens on my property. And I can tell you that the amount of chicken waste
Yeah.
that I had in my first year compared to the amount of chicken waste that I now process in my 5th year is drastically different because it just adds up over time. And so I could see this for a CAFO that, the first 1,000 head of cattle, they produce waste, and I might not notice that. But year 2, I'm concerned about in year 2, that 1,000 head of cattle now is 2 years worth of cattle waste. I'm doing good, y'all. It's 2 years worth of cattle waste.
I think you got the first year plus 4 years to file. Is way I understand this bill.
I don't see that in there.
Yeah.
Well, we're trying to make a law here, so.
We need to get clarification on that
Okay.
from a attorney, unless our attorney that's on the committee wants to weigh in. That's a question. That's a good question. I've heard the 4-year statute of limitations thrown out there when we've had this issue before us in the past, but it's not being an attorney either, I'm not clear on that. And the nuisance, because it's a CAFO, could you make a case that just because you maybe didn't notice it, the nuisance was there during the first year? I mean, the odor, if it's odor, I would think it was there the first year, so you would have, I think you could argue that you would have a 4-year statute to bring a suit, but we need to for sure get clarification on that. And there's going to be ample time on this bill to so that we get that answer. We may end up getting different opinions from different lawyers. That's what happened last time.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for the question. Senator Rahman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. My question is, you mentioned something on testimony is getting more and more problematic for farmers. Can you just give me a simple example of a small family farm in Georgia that has been shut down by nuisance lawsuits?
Well, I don't, in fact, I think, what usually happens, the farmer, really sells out to the neighbors, in other states, it's been, kind of intimidation. I've got actually a neighbor in Middle Georgia right now that's being intimidated, by threatening to, file multiple nuisance lawsuits against him, totally unsubstantiated, but then he's gonna have to go hire attorneys and that sort of thing. I think that's been the pattern, is it has not been many huge full-blown lawsuits that normally settled out of court for money or for other things going on. Other parts of the country, I understand developers who want the neighbors, farmers' property will initiate some of this type of thing to try to urge him to sell some of those type of things. So again, as I said, I think this is we're trying to get ahead of the curve on this as fast as Georgia's growing, and as many years ago, everybody kind of understood what farmers did, ran equipment. Sometimes it's dust, sometimes it's some noise and maybe some smells. But now people sometimes are very unforgiving neighbors, tough. And so I just think at some point farmers need to be able to continue operating their farm like they have done for years and years and years, and give them a little definitive protection to be able to run their business without. It's certainly a big threat to farmers when they have to go into lawsuits and that sort of thing. So that would be my only answer to you.
One more quick questions.
Yes, sir, and we got other questions, other board.
So we're just trying to protect what's happening in other states, not happening, it might not happen here.
Yeah, some judges have made some strange rulings in some other states about this outside condition issue, and that's what we're trying to clarify with this language.
So, and also, do you know if any large amount of money any small farmer has to pay for,
I don't have that information.
That'd be all. Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
All right, Senator Sims.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one quick question. How many nuisance lawsuits have we experienced in the state of Georgia? And I think we're saying that most of the complaints have come from people that did not farm, but my experiences have been about half and half. Some of the complaints have come from farmers that have owned family farms for many years. But how many nuisance lawsuits? Is this a chronic condition in the state?
I think it's ongoing. It's not overly terrible now, but we don't hear about them. I think you hear more about it when you have these neighbors with farmers than you do farmers. Farmers are pretty notorious for feuding with their neighbors. They're wanting their neighbor's land or jealous of the neighbor's operation. I hear a lot about that, and I can give you some examples of that. But again, I think it's something that doesn't, the courts or trying to keep them out of court, trying to understand, put a definitive boundary on what's allowed and what's not allowed, and what you can sue about and what you can't, and is a little bit what I'm trying to do with this bill.
All right, Senator Goodman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Dickey, we know what's going on. I had the opportunity to speak with somebody over the weekend, a farmer from Ukraine, and the way things are looking over there, from my understanding is, I didn't know this, but Ukraine produces about 5% of the world's food supply every year.
Yeah.
So they could feed the entire population of the United States for 2 years in a row what they produce in 1 year, and all that food production is looking like it may not get planted this year. And you know, we study agriculture and we look at how much more food we've got to produce in the future in order to sustain mankind. I think if I remember correctly, we've got to double food production by 2050 across the world in order not to have famine. It is the intent of this law. So in order to do that, business goes towards stability. And people, we're going to have farms to grow. We're going to have more farms to come online in order to be able to feed humanity. I mean, is the intention of this bill, you think, to try to give some stability to these people that are going to invest in these operations so that they can know that they're not going to have to worry about these nuisance lawsuits in terms of being able to keep up with world food production, to keep up with humanity?
I agree. You know, farmers face a lot of adversity, rising cost and uncertainty with the weather, uncertainty with the markets, and they don't need uncertainty about them being litigated against. And Georgia's you don't have to ride many roads to see the billboards and the TV commercials on TV about the litigation going on in Georgia. It's very prevalent, and farmers. It's a very capital intensive business, and if you've got issues out there about that, you're not going to get much capital invested in agriculture if we keep putting up these barriers and roadblocks to farmers. It's tough enough out there now. So this is one answer to try to minimize that worry about farmers.
Thank you.
All right, Senator Burns.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I thank the chairman for bringing the bill. I know it's been a challenging task. It's been a long road. Let's look quickly at line 110. Has been in operation for 1 year or more. Is it correct that is nothing that you changed? That is current law. Is that correct?
That is current law.
So we did not change the law to say 1 year or more. That is the current law. Is that correct?
That is correct.
I'll ask you a more challenging question, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
Yes,
one more. I do appreciate the carve out in lines 120 through 125 on CAFOs. And I acknowledge the fact that nuisance results, when a nuisance results from negligent, improper, or illegal operations, then there is no protection. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And I think the bigger challenge is, how do we define improper? And I suspect that would likely be in a court of law. Is that true?
Well, it could be, but I think it could be with our law enforcement. I mean, Department of Ag, rules, regs, EPA, EPD, local zoning. I think it would probably refer to those rules that the farm has to abide by.
And so that if this operation, any ag operation, not just a CAFO, but any ag operation, did not follow Georgia Department of Agricultural rules and guidelines, or EPD, then they would not be offered this protection.
Absolutely, will not. I do not want to protect any farm or any business that's not following rules, regs, law, any of those type things. And we've got good laws, I think, in this state that address all those issues, whatever they may be, where it's animal or ag or farming, all those type of safety issues. This bill does not do any protection whatsoever if you're not operating within those guidelines.
Thank you.
Thank you for the
clarification.
All right, I got you, but we're going to go around the room here. Senator Summers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I know y'all worked on a bill right when I was coming in here, the bill about the Farm Act, and it was a very complicated bill, and I want to applaud you for breaking this bill down and getting a very clear, concise bill. And if I understand it correctly, I'm just making sure I'm on the same music you're on, is basically farmers have protection right now, but we're giving them more protection. That's what your plans are, is to give them more protection.
I don't think we're giving them more. No, sir. I think what we're doing is clarifying what protection they have.
They have.
I think that is the issue now. I got a lot of good friends that are attorneys, but they love to
Oh, yeah.
litigate, you ask them different questions, you'll get different answers. And I think this bill is trying to clarify what the condition is. Take out this outside condition that's the big variable and try to narrow it down to black and white. When there's a nuisance and when there's not.
So what you're saying,
What protection the farm does have.
the ones that may be against this bill or not understand this bill or whatever the reason is their rub would be the fact that they're going to get 10 different answers from different attorneys is basically what you're telling me.
Well, you
Yeah.
said it, I didn't. I think you're going, the bill we have now is open to some litigation, different interpretations.
In your opinion, this bill basically helps and protects farmers
Yes,
even
sir.
better.
I would, yes, sir. I've spent a lot of time trying to do that, and that's what this bill does, in my opinion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sure. Senator Hatchett, who is an attorney,
Correct. And a very good one, too.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
and a
Mr.
Fox
Chairman.
News celebrity.
Yeah, that's right. Jeff Mullis dragged me into that one. Thank you for bringing this. This is obviously in my district, agriculture is a huge part of the economy, just like it is everywhere in the state. And this piece of legislation, while it's not titled the same, I think has the same intent as the policy behind the Right to Farm bill in the past that I know you worked with my
Right.
predecessor on this. And one of the things that I just want to make some clarification on is, and make sure that we're on the same page. The laws in the state of Georgia, when these were written, the intent behind it was to protect farmers from neighborhoods coming in. And so that changed condition definition was brought in to say, if you're a neighborhood and you come in, that changes the condition around the farm. And if that farm's been there for more than a year and you came to it, then you can't then file a lawsuit against the farm that was already there. Is that right?
That's the way I understand it. Yes, sir.
But see here we're taking that definition out. And the reason for that is because there are some states where judges and attorneys have been attacking this change condition language, and they're interpreting it differently than the intent of the legislation.
That is my understanding. Absolutely. Well said.
Which is why we think we need to take that definition out completely in order to further protect the interest of existing farmers now, so a judge can't then interpret it like they did in North Carolina.
Correct.
But further, to just, Mr. Chairman, if I can ask you another
Sure.
question. In this bill, it specifically says you got to be operating lawfully, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You can't just lean on freedom to farm and then violate any environmental protection agency regulations or negligently operate your chicken house or anything like that. You got to be lawfully operating under the laws of the state of Georgia and the environmental protection. And if you don't, then you can't use this as protection.
Absolutely. We all, as farmers, I want my neighbors, I want myself to be operating lawfully. And nobody wants a bad neighbor.
That's right. And one more follow-up question, Mr.
Sure.
Chairman. This is also just specifically tailored to the nuisance lawsuit. So if and I can't even think of another, I guess, theory you could file a lawsuit under, but if you're contaminating a creek or you're operating improperly, that doesn't apply to this
No,
either, does it?
no,
It's
no.
just the nuisance,
Absolutely.
which has been there for a year or more.
Correct.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Senator Jackson.
Yes, thank you for coming back to me, Mr. Chairman. Just two questions. The first one is, you talk a lot about trying to help farmers not end up being litigated against over and over and over again. And I support that. I don't want farmers being constantly dragged into court. However, is there anything in this bill that actually prevents somebody from filing a frivolous lawsuit against any farmer?
No, you can actually file, but this bill makes it abundantly clear that they can use the protections, right to farm protections in law now, as a good, so it's a great deterrent to another attorney bringing a lawsuit against them. It's very clear to someone that about whether it would be successful or not.
And then my second question, so this body has entertained similar bills like this in the past, and actually passed out of the Senate a bill that made it so that you had a statute of limitations to file based on when the nuisance begins. So right now, this law ties your nuisance complaint to having happened within the first year of the nuisance operating, the first year of the farm operating. But in the past, we've tried to tie it to the actual nuisance itself. So to go back to my country farm story I began with, therefore, if the nuisance begins in year 2, I would still be able to file suit and have the same 4 years of statute of limitations as usual. But I wouldn't be confined to, Senator Sims' farm over here, she managed to keep the smells down, managed to keep the lights from being, keeping everybody awake. She kept those things at bay for 1 year. So now, for henceforth and forevermore, I can never sue her for a nuisance. We've amended it before, and I wonder if you might be amenable to that, to say from the time of the nuisance beginning, no matter how long you've been in operation, if your conditions in your farm change, so if you go from having a non-smelly farm to a smelly farm, even if that's in year 5, that would open the statute of limitations then.
I think your scenario would just keep things going on and on. It'd just be a constant non-protection of the farm. I think a neighbor could always use that excuse, it wasn't there the year before and now it's there. I think a year's time that we have now has worked well. It gives you a whole year cycle of what that farm's doing, the anticipation, and I think your scenario, it was just, and that's been the problem in the past. It just keeps rolling the non-protection indefinitely down there. So I just don't think that really addresses the litigation issue that we're trying to solve here. Thank you.
All right, on that same topic, I'm going to let Senator Harper speak to the amendment on the Senate floor when we did pass this bill.
I will, speaking to what
Last
Senator
time.
Jackson just brought up, that particular nuisance provision, Chairman Dickey, if you'll remember, the way House Bill 545 passed out of this committee actually did not include that provision. And in fact, that provision was not a part of the original Right to Farm statute or part of the Right to Farm law. That provision was actually brought by an amendment by Senator Burns' predecessor on the floor of the Senate. And when in fact, I would argue the majority of the Senate Ag Committee voted against that particular amendment on the floor of the Senate, which is why at the late hour, the House Bill 545 went back to the House, in which at what time Chairman McCall, because of the time crunch we were under, was unable to bring it forward to remove that provision and send it back to the Senate for an up or down vote. So that particular provision was not voted out of this committee. At that time, it was only added at a late hour on the floor of the Senate. I did vote for House Bill 545 to pass the Senate with that provision in it, but I did not support that underlying amendment. And the reason I would argue that myself and every other member that voted for House Bill 545 with that particular provision in it was to ensure that it moved over to the other body to continue the conversation, to allow us to address that issue before, so we could get the right bill before us. So that's where that particular provision comes from, which is why it is in the quote-unquote final version of House Bill 545 that you might could pull up on the internet. So that addresses that, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, and I'll agree with Chairman Harper with the exception that he's letting the House off mighty light, saying there wasn't time. It wasn't on sine die or anything. This was anyway. You're being mighty kind. All right, I got Senator Sims and, Senator Sims. No, Okay. Senator Burns, there you go.
Just a comment, Mr. Chairman. I was not here when 545 came to the floor, and it was a very contentious situation, and my predecessor was not a farmer, but an attorney. So, just
All right.
a very good attorney, and currently a judge, Mr. Chairman.
Fine fella, absolutely. Chairman Anderson.
Chairman, isn't it true that the wind blows to the south and the wind blows to the north and to the east and to the west?
Absolutely.
And isn't it true that some days you might smell something?
On some farms.
But as long as that farmer does what he's supposed to do, right, with all the guidelines, he's protected with this.
That's what I'm hoping this committee will pass a bill that does that.
And also, doesn't this save the farm that's been passed down from generations, from generations, from generations?
It does that, and it also.
As long as the farmer does what's right.
Correct.
Doesn't this bill protect the new farmer that's just been here 1 year?
Yes, sir.
As long as he does it right.
That's what I'm hoping. That's what this bill does.
I rest my case.
All right. Senator Goodman, and then we'll. And this, y'all, it's 5 o'clock, so we're going.
Mine will be quick.
We're going to take these 2 questions and comments, and then we'll call it a day.
Mr. Chairman, I had something happen. You know, I grow blueberries now, but growing up, I grew peanuts, cotton, and tobacco. We had, how does this work in terms of rented land? I remember one time when I came home from college, and we were irrigating peanuts and had a traveler out there and had about a 1944 Detroit diesel. And anyway, some folks called the law on us because they said the motor was too loud. And you know, we were just trying. Our peanuts were burning up, you know. But it was rented land where we were at, where we had these peanuts growing out. How's this bill going to help that farmer in that regard?
Well, I think it would help him if he's been running that motor for you know quite a few years, and that's been there. It's something that neighbor ought to be expecting a few nights a year, a few days a year. So I think it's.
It would apply. It would give the protection then to rented
I
land.
feel it
as
would.
well.
I mean, again, I'm not an attorney, Senator, but I think it would.
All right. Thank you. Senator Harper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to ask kind of a series of questions to address I think a lot of the concerns that have been raised. I'm not a lawyer, but I say that all the time around here, but I did stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night.
That'll be good, just to sit in your official stump speech.
That's
though.
right.
We're tired.
I understand. That said, just kind of a couple of things that have been brought up. I think it's important to point out a few things. Number one, Mr. Chairman, is it not true that whenever you buy a piece of property, and there's a piece of property that is zoned agriculture, has an agricultural purpose there, that under Georgia law, specifically Code Section 4401-17, that before you purchase that property, even if you're looking at that property, that under Georgia law, you're required to be informed that an agricultural property is next to you or an operation exists next to a property that you're looking to purchase. Is that not true?
Thanks for bringing that up. You're absolutely right on that. Yes.
So I think that's important so that when people are moving to another area of the state, and there's an existing ag operation, they have to be informed that operation
That's
is
the
in
law,
existence.
yes.
Regarding CAFOs, I know this has been a lot of discussion around that this morning or this afternoon. We've been here a long time today. This afternoon, I would argue under the current framework of the law that if you on my farm or Russ's farm or your farm, if you instituted some sort of CAFO, whether it's for a few head or more, that under the existing law, actually you could argue that existing protection actually exists on your farm already, and there would be no case for a nuisance lawsuit to possibly be filed against your operation Would that be,
I think you're possibly right, and that's why we put this added
That's right.
protection, added time frame for.
so
in
under
bill.
this provision on CAFOs, it doesn't matter how, if my farm is in existence for 150 years, if I decided to put a CAFO on my operation, there can be a nuisance lawsuit filed after the initiated start date of such CAFO, when it's been in operation at least a year, and you have 4 years to file that lawsuit. Would that be an accurate representation of the new change?
Absolutely.
In regards to past lawsuits, is it not true that in some cases, I know the question was asked about what nuisance lawsuits have been filed in Georgia. Is it not true that that there could be lawsuits that have been filed that we never know about, that there could be lawsuits that were settled out of court that we never know about? But there are examples in other states that we definitely know about, especially where federal judges have ruled their provisions of their law that is similar to ours actually doesn't apply, and has been brought up by the attorney Bo Hatchett so eloquently that's the need for the adjustments and the changes under our law. Would that be an accurate
That is absolutely
statement?
true, and that's why all these different ag organizations throughout our state are really behind this bill, working for this bill. It works across the board, many industries, ag industries, to give all these the needed protection and safety.
I think one thing that's important under this new version that you hit on, but I don't think we've hit on enough, is I think under the new version that we have before us actually protects urban agriculture to a greater extent than current Georgia law allows. Would you agree?
I agree. I think if we didn't take this outside change conditions there that Senator Hatch talking about, urban would never ever get any farm protection. It just too many change conditions outside.
And just one more, Mr.
Yes.
Chairman, and I'll close it out. Under today, and we talk about this, how, in my opinion, agriculture is a national security concern. We need to be producing our own food, our own fiber, our own shelter within our own borders to the greatest extent possible. And, Georgia and America look a lot different today than they did 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. Matter of fact, it was just in the 1950s when we had more tractors on the farm than we had mules. And I think that's why, and Senator Goodman brought this up, that we need to be doubling food production by 2050 to feed the world, which is why it's more important today that we continue to protect agriculture, continue to protect the industry and moving it in the right direction. 98% of farms in Georgia and in America are family-owned operations, and we've got to find ways to continue to protect that. But even at that, and this has kind of been alluded to already, even by protecting them, they still have to abide by local zoning ordinances that have to be zoned agriculture. They still have to abide by EPD, EPA regulations. They can still be sued for any of those cases.
Correct.
And if a county doesn't allow it, you still can't build an operation in a particular area if that local government does not allow it. Would that be
Absolutely.
accurate? Well, Chairman Dickey, thank you for bringing this. I think this is important for the ag industry, and I look forward to our continued work together to get across the finish line. Mr. Chairman, thank you very much.
Okay, one more, Senator Sims.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
One question quickly.
Maybe I can talk over the recording. The interpretation that we've heard from the gentleman tends to skew towards farmers. The majority of my district is agriculture. There is no way I would sit here and be disloyal to their concerns. But what I'm hearing is one interpretation of what this bill does. Now, farmers are also being impacted by this bill, will be impacted. Now, I don't know what group of farmers you guys are talking about, but the interpretation, I feel, is very much skewed in. So is there a way, Mr. Chairman, that I can hear from, maybe on another day, maybe not today, I know it's because I want to go home too, can hear from others that have the opposite concerns? Because right now I'm hearing the same speech from everybody.
Yes, ma'am. As I
Yes, sir.
said at the start of the meeting, I don't know if you had arrived yet or not, but we're going to have a public hearing, an opportunity for public testimony. I didn't feel like it was fair. On a Monday, this bill passed out of the House last week, and then we just got the agenda out over the weekend or late Friday. And I knew this meeting was going to run long, and it's, I feel like this is as important an issue as we will have all year. We need to take the time to hear from everybody, be sure we're being fair to all the property owners. This is a property rights matter is what it boils down to. And I want everybody to have an opportunity to have reasonable amount of input, and we're going to do that, and then we'll decide if we want to make any changes or not, and if the will of the committee, we'll look at that, and then we'll move forward, hopefully. But I think the Chairman Dickey has done a great job presenting it, and I wanted us to have plenty of time to hear from the author of the bill, and we'll have an opportunity to hear from others later. So thank you all for your attendance and your good questions and your patience, and thank you, Chairman Dickey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and all the committee for hearing this. It is a very important bill, very important for all agriculture, and thank you for your questions, and look forward to coming back.
Thank you. All right, the meeting is adjourned.